Good afternoon and welcome to this event, the opening event of Equality Days, which will be ongoing until Thursday. This event is called Forum Algorithms to Equality. Can AI help tackle discrimination in the job market? My name is Gústav Adolf Bergmann Sigurbjörnsson and I will be moderating this event today. During this event, we will be exploring the connection between AI and equality and examining the possibilities that the technology provides, as well as how it can also be a major discriminatory factor. We will be having 2 talks today, and then following the talks, we'll have a panel discussion. We'll be having, so there will be 2 presentations. The first one will be by Sigyn Jónsdóttir and the second one by Dilys, Sharona, Quartey. Sigyn Jónsdóttir is the CTO and co-founder of Alda, and her talk is called AI and Inclusion, Amplifying Voices in the Labor Market.
All right. Thank you so much, Gústav, for this introduction. I'm super excited to be here with you all today. So imagine walking into work every day, knowing that your voice matters, your perspective is valued, and your identity is not just tolerated, but truly embraced. Now imagine the opposite, where subtle biases, cultural barriers, or systemic structures make you feel like you don't belong. Which of these environments do you think fuels innovation, productivity, and job satisfaction? Inclusion in the labor market isn't just a moral imperative, the right thing to do, it's an economic and social one. Research consistently shows that when people feel included, they're more engaged, innovative, and productive. But inclusion isn't just about being physically in the room. It's about having a voice that is expected in the room. Yet, data from the Icelandic labor market shows that many individuals still feel excluded and undervalued. Last year, we at Alda published the first Icelandic Inclusion Index, measuring inclusion in the Icelandic labor market with a focus on identifying if there was a difference in inclusion between different groups of people, both from a societal and demographical perspective and a work-related one. For instance, women are more likely to feel that their contributions have been ignored than they are to hold a C-level position. The most stark difference in the gender experience is for non-binary people who fare notably worse compared to both men and women. But numbers like these aren't just statistics. They represent real experiences, real people who, despite their skills and contributions, feel shut out, undervalued, or even unsafe in their workplace. And this is where AI enters the conversation, because AI is trained on human data, meaning it can reflect these existing inequities that we see so clearly in our data. Attempts have been made to make AI more inclusive, and many steps have been taken in the right direction already. The frameworks and guidelines currently in place also seem to engage relatively superficially with the best practice in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's unclear how recent the research and published materials they rely on actually are. A detailed analysis was conducted on 46 inclusion standards for artificial intelligence, which revealed that they are generally designed to ensure only the absolute minimum effort in these matters. And furthermore, they generally do not take a holistic view or societal responsibility into account, but rather focus on technical implementations. I'm a very optimistic person by nature, so I regularly check whether the situation, for example, with ChatGPT is improving in terms of bias. But just last week, when I was making this presentation, I asked it, "Can you draw me a picture of a doctor?" And I got this stereotype, a white, non-disabled man in his 40s. So how could AI be a force for greater inclusion in the labor market? Will it simply reflect and entrench the biases of the past and the present? At its best, AI can uncover hidden patterns of exclusion, support more equitable policies, and help build workplaces where everyone, regardless of identity, background, or ability, can thrive. But at its worst, AI risks automating the very biases that create these disparities in the first place. Today, we're going to explore AI's role in workplace inclusion, its potential, its bias, its pitfalls, and most importantly, how we can ensure that it serves as a tool for equity rather than exclusion. Let's start by looking at how different groups in the Icelandic labor market experience inclusion using data from the 2024 Alda Inclusion Index. And why are we looking at that? Because to understand how AI can help, we first need to understand where the challenges lie. Our research at Alda matches the theory in the field and reveals significant disparities in how different groups experience inclusion at work. LGBTQ+ individuals are 50% more likely than cishet people to feel that their identity negatively impacts their career development opportunities. This means that LGBTQ+ individuals may feel pressure to hide who they are at work, leading to stress and disengagement. Individuals with foreign backgrounds are 50% more likely than native-born individuals to have experienced a toxic workplace culture. This could include language barriers, cultural exclusion, or lack of career progression due to unconscious bias. Non-binary individuals are approximately 5 times more likely than men and women to have experienced microaggressions. Think about being misgendered every day at work or dismissed in subtle but frequent ways. Over time, this affects mental health and job performance. Disabled people are over 3 times more likely to have been bullied than non-disabled people. This shows that accessibility and inclusivity are still major challenges. But remember, these are not just numbers or statistics. These are lived experiences that only take into account the past 12 months before the survey was taken last year. And if AI is to support inclusion, it must address these real disparities rather than reinforce them. Next, let's dive a bit deeper. Let's talk about intersectionality, how these challenges become even more complex when identities overlap. So marginalization is not a one-size-fits-all. Many people experience exclusion from multiple angles, which creates even greater barriers to inclusion. Intersectionality is a term that describes how different aspects of identity, such as gender, ethnicity, disability, and sexual orientation, intersect and shape workplace experiences. People at multiple intersections of marginalization experience compounded disadvantages. Let's look at some examples. For example, a non-binary individual with a foreign background may, for instance, face a bias in their career progression due to their nationality and microaggressions due to their gender identity, and a complex mix of all of these things. Another example, a disabled Black woman may experience a gender bias in leadership roles, workplace inaccessibility, and cultural stereotypes affecting hiring and promotions. So the real question here is, can AI recognize and account for these overlapping barriers? Because most AI systems are designed to analyze single variables, like gender or race. But real-life discrimination is layered and complex. And this is where inclusive data collection and algorithm design become critical. So now that we've explored the gaps, let's move to some solutions. How can AI actually help create a more inclusive workplace? AI is already being used in some workplaces to reduce bias, increase accessibility, and foster belonging. And like Dilys will talk about later, to reduce and work on bias in hiring. Here are 4 key areas where AI can practically improve workplace inclusion. The first one is detecting bias in workplace practices. So AI can analyze performance reviews to flag biased language, for instance. An example would be if women receive feedback about soft skills more often than leadership potential, AI can flag this and alert managers to adjust their evaluation criteria. Another example would be enhancing accessibility. So AI-powered real-time translation tools can support multilingual teams, making workplaces more inclusive on a global level. AI-driven assistive technologies like screen readers, adaptive keyboards, or voice commands can help disabled employees work more effectively. And then we have personalized learning and development. This is a huge opportunity. AI can recommend career training tailored to individual needs, helping employers and employees learn in a more tailored way. And employees from underrepresented backgrounds access professional growth opportunities. For example, we could also see that neurodivergent employees could get personalized learning tools that match their preferred way of processing information. And the 4th one is promoting inclusive workplace culture. So AI can analyze workplace survey data like the inclusion data from Alda and identify problem areas to focus on improving for a more inclusive workplace. So the key takeaway here is that AI alone won't fix workplace exclusion, but when built ethically, it can highlight biases, create transparency, and support meaningful change. Let's close this by discussing what it takes to ensure AI systems actually work for inclusion rather than against it. So we know that AI will reflect the biases of the people who build and train it, unless we actively intervene. The key risks to avoid are, for instance, the bias in training data. AI learns from existing workplace patterns, which may already be exclusionary. The lack of intersectionality. AI often analyzes one variable at a time, failing to account for complex discrimination. And then there's privacy concerns. AI monitoring can feel like surveillance rather than support, especially for marginalized employees. And then we have some actions to mitigate these risks, and this is extremely important. We need to ensure that diverse data sets are used in AI training, even supplemental data. We need to implement transparency. Employees should know when AI is influencing workplace decisions. And then we need to build feedback mechanisms. Employees should be able to challenge AI-driven outcomes. It shouldn't always be AI knows best. So despite these risks, AI has the potential to be a powerful tool for inclusion if designed and used correctly. So AI is not automatically going to create inclusion, but if designed intentionally, it can be a powerful tool, not only to increase productivity and optimize our work, but also to amplify voices, bridge gaps, and create a fairer workplace. I'm really excited to continue the discussion with Dilys and Gústav later, where we'll explore these ideas further. The future of work should not just be efficient, it should be inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigyn, for a wonderful talk, and I also look forward to talking to you about it after Dilys' talk. Next up is Dilys Sharona Quartey. She's a PhD student in sociology at the University of Iceland and a doctoral researcher on the BIAS project, which is a EU-based project focused on mitigating biases of AI in the labor market. Her talk is called Artificial Intelligence in the Labor Market, the Occurrence of Bias and Bias Mitigation Strategies, a European Perspective. Yeah, you're good to go, Dilys.
Well, yeah, thank you. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm really excited because listening to Sigyn's presentation, it sort of falls a lot into what I have to say. So this project is an EU project, and it includes data collected from Iceland, and so it's a 4-year project in 9 different countries, and it has 2 main goals. So we have the social science part, that is to collect data and from interviews and ethnographies and case studies, and then we have the technical part that will sort of use part of the data to try to design a mitigating system that can sort of point out bias. So the data collected from the study was in 2 phases or 2 parts. So data, we did the expert interviews with 71 HR and AI experts from December 2022 to May 2023. And then we also did a second phase of the interviews from December 2023 to December 2024 with 44 participants. And this time it was mostly in Iceland and the Netherlands. And we also included the voices of civil society organizations. So basically, when you talk about bias, one is thinking, what is bias? Bias is basically when a person is either given an advantage or gains an undue advantage over another person, mostly based on their identifiable characteristics like their race, their sex, their nationality, their gender, their education, or their appearance. And in the case of the labor market or human resource management, we have AI being used in recruitment systems and management systems that can sort of reproduce biases reproduce biases in the system. So yeah, I'm going to focus on how these biases occur when AI is used for recruitment and management, and then I'll talk about some of the ways in which these biases can be mitigated. So there's a saying that a system is as strong as the data, or as powerful as the data you use. And as Sigyn mentioned, there are biases in data that is used to train the AI. So the AI tends to reinforce these biases. And so in some cases, when data that is used to train the AI either overrepresents one group or underrepresents another group, it leads to bias. So there's this famous Amazon case that we use a lot. People are more aware of this, and they sort of had this recruitment system, and they trained the AI with data from their past employees, and most of the employees of Amazon are men. So these recruitment systems tended to throw out women's CVs, and anything that had to do with women, it just threw them out, and it was very gender biased. So this is like a good example of an AI system that becomes biased when data that is used that is not representative. And also initially, computer systems used to be like very rule-based, and it was simple, easy to understand. But now with AI, the computational power of these systems are very strong, and it uses high amounts of data that is mostly unstructured, and it makes it like very difficult to understand the processes of how AI arrives at a certain decision. So like when there's issue of bias, then it's difficult to explain to a worker maybe why you are not getting a promotion or why your salary is being reduced, because it's mostly because, oh, the machine says so. And sometimes the AI model can be faulty, or it can have, from research, AI always has a margin of error that tends to lead to bias. And people, so for instance, if maybe it's 90% accurate, the 10% part leads to people falling within the cracks. And then the command that is given to the AI, the input parameters. So for instance, what the AI is supposed to look out for in terms of recruitment, the characteristics of the ideal candidate might exclude some people, whilst it unfairly advantages other people. So as Sigyn also talked about the biases of the people, and there's a, for AI might be a machine, but it's a machine that is designed and also used by people. So when people have these kind of biases, it sort of seeps into the programming of the machine or how the machine is used. So the kind of data that is chosen to train the AI is decided by people, and the kind of parameters that is set for the AI on what it's supposed to look for is also decided by people. And also there's this language that is used to structure jobs. And for instance, when job advertisements are not gender neutral, you tend to get, for instance, you're looking for a salesperson, and then you make a job ad and says, oh, maybe a salesman. This tends to sort of push maybe women and other people that don't fit that criteria from applying. And then, for instance, when in management, sometimes AI can be used to predict employee turnover or absenteeism, and this can lead to like unfair termination because the company is like, okay, you're probably going to leave us soon, so maybe we should just let you go soon. And then, or it can be used to determine salary scales or who gets promoted and who doesn't, especially when you're using AI, when you're looking at just the metrics without considering like soft skills that can be measured with AI. For instance, in customer service, and the number of calls that a person picks instead of maybe the quality of the conversation they had with the customer. So, I mean, I've mentioned like some of these examples. One interesting example that I wanted to put out there is a case where an individual applied for work, an immigrant applied for work with their names on a CV to several companies and got rejected a lot for interviews. But then they changed their name to like a more white-sounding name, and all of a sudden they got so many calls for like interviews. So this is like one of like interesting example of AI bias in recruitment. So now I'm going to talk about how to deal with these biases, and Sigyn has touched on a few. But then, because when you talk about bias, you talk about unconscious bias, people having bias. So then there's a need to create awareness, on bias, and also awareness on the rights of workers, and to have training on diversity, equity, inclusion. And it's also important to have like a designated officer that is, by a company that does this. So like getting a diversity, equity, inclusion officer that will sort of advise recruiters on how to structure their job ads or what language to use that will be more inclusive to attract more people. And also, depending on like the pointers in the job ads, if you're using AI to search for people, if you use salesman, then there's a high chance that the algorithm will mostly search for just men instead of a more inclusive group. So in the case where maybe AI is used to determine employee turnover or employee absenteeism, instead of probably just using individual data, it's good to have like an aggregated data. That way, you don't single one person out, and then management can sort of focus on dealing with employees as a group instead of just, one person. And then another way to mitigate bias is to anonymize CVs, because for the example I gave where the name change led to this individual being called back, if, for instance, you're using AI to recruit and then there's no name, there's no gender, and then it's just looking at skills, it makes the process more fair, as opposed to when you have these names that sort of leads to discrimination. And then bias should be something that is considered from the onset. It's not something that you think about, oh, we're done with creating our system, so let's see how we can mitigate bias. It should be like at the back of your mind when the system is being designed, and also when it's being used. And when you're setting your criteria for what you want the system to do, you should have bias at the back of your mind to do this, to input it into the system. So, and developer companies who design these tools should be able to, be transparent about what their the limits of their tools, because sometimes organizations buy these tools and it says, oh, this tool is, can mitigate bias. And then to them, because it says it can mitigate bias, they don't really check much. They just assume that the tool is like this superpower that can just do away with everything. But then AI is not foolproof, and it's so we have to like be conscious of, you have to like take these tools with a grain of salt, not to believe everything, and to scrutinize as much as possible. And then to have human oversight. There is something you call human in the loop, and Sigyn talked about it in terms of having, for instance, in very large language models, to have to make it such that a person can intercept, at various key points of the automation or the program, where they can fix mistakes or errors that come about. And then there's also, this I realized was done in the Netherlands, where they have like third-party audit companies. And for instance, if you're a small company, you can't afford to have like AI ethics officer, you can sort of employ the services of these third-party audit companies to audit the systems that you purchase before you actually use them or before you implement them. And then there's a belief that if you have a diverse team, working on the development of an AI tool, or you have a diverse HR recruitment or management team, the likelihood that your decisions will be more inclusive is higher than when you just have a homogeneous team. So another way to improve diversity or inclusion is to have a diversity quota without sacrificing qualification. So for instance, you as a company, you want to improve diversity, equity, inclusion in your company, and you're thinking, oh, I've hired people of this so-and-so nationality, I want to increase this for this number of people. You can give like a quota for different categories of people to make your recruitment applicants more diverse. And then also before you implement, AI tools, there has to be a lot of preparedness in the company. You have to not just prepare your management team, you also have to prepare your employees, and also respect the rights of employees and the needs of these employees. And this boils down to communicating with your employees on what is going to happen, the changes that are going to be made, how this is going to affect them, and allow them to voice out their perspectives or their needs or what they feel can be done or should be done, or let them have an opinion. As Sigyn said, let them have a voice, in the changes or technical changes that the company is going through, because they are the ones that it would affect the most. And then during talking to all these experts, some were saying that we need more regulations. Others said we need to implement, the regulations that we already have. And then there's also the need to have at least one standardized type of regulation. And this was because some experts or companies complained that there are so many regulations and they don't know which one to follow. So it makes compliance difficult. So I think this is something the AI Act is trying to achieve by having one standardized regulation where companies can sort of follow through to protect the rights of workers, increase transparency, and reduce bias and improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. So on a final note, I mean, AI is basically here to stay. It's not going anywhere, because in as much as it has these negative impacts, it also has a lot of positives that organizations and that benefits organizations and employees. So there's also a need to sort of do a thorough exploration and examine, different ways of addressing the negative impact that AI comes with. And also, it's very important to note that when it comes to dealing with the issues of AI, and Sigyn mentioned intersectionality, that there's a problem with intersectionality. So to deal with this problem, we also need to take an intersectional approach. So a very holistic, collaborative approach of all the stakeholders that are involved, that are affected, that are using it, that are developing the tool, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilys. And you can maybe just come and join us here. Thank you for this interesting talk, and both of you for these interesting talks. This is obviously, I mean, AI has been talk of the town a lot lately, and like people have been thinking a lot about like all of the implications, like broadly in society, and how this will affect life. And we have like the whole scale of it. Some people think like we're just at like a cusp of just like massive societal change because like AI will change everything. Others are less optimistic and think this will just like this is just like a phase or a hype bubble that we're living through. So one thing I'd like kind of want to ask you, just like both of you from the beginning, is just like how much is AI being used in recruitment in Iceland? Like, are you aware of much usage, and how do you see this as kind of developing?
Yeah, I think for now, at least based on my research, it's not being used much in recruitment, but like in management, it's rather used more in management, like to optimize work, to sort of take over repetitive tasks and stuff like that. And also, I also did like research in the fishing industry of Iceland, and AI is used like for management. So for instance, it's used to monitor like performance, measure performances of employees, and in some cases it's used to like give extra bonuses to employees. So it's like the employees that work on like the fishing, the processing line or the assembly line, and then there's the section of the processing line that is like the trimming line. So it's mostly worked by women, and they sort of have to like clean the fish and, you know, fillet, cut it, and the machine measures like their productivity, like how well they clean the fish, how much tons they do, you know, a very extremely detailed. And before they didn't have that, but this was introduced a few years ago. And it's like it scrutinizes like even more, more like what they do and how to do it. So, and some of the employees complain that like it's very stressful, you know, sometimes. And the introduction of the AI has made their work more fast-paced, and it's made it's like they have to do more. They get like now they are doing more than they used to, even though it's like the same salary, same everything. And so it's like it's good for the company. Production is like really high, but it's also interesting that some of them also say that this also makes their work easy. So, but then the monitoring aspect of it, sort of, especially in the companies where they use it as like an extra bonus system to give more bonuses, the stress is really high because then you're like, you know, looking at the screen wondering like, you know, how much am I doing? Am I doing better? So it's like, because like there's money on the line, people they also feel the need to work faster, because the more you work, you know, then the better your chances of, you know, getting higher bonuses. So it puts a lot of stress on them. And yeah, I think it was very interesting. So I hope I answered your question. I feel like I'm just rambling on and on.
I actually think like, you know, we all know how much we're using AI at work, and this is like, I would completely panic if I were into this AI surveillance there in the fishing industry. But we all know it. We're using generative AI a lot, you know, to create, you know, texts, emails, presentations, whatever. And of course, you know, in the tech industry, we use Copilot a lot to just speed up coding and everything we're doing. But in like everything optimizing, everything that's repetitive, admin tasks, we are using AI a lot. But in recruitment, I'm thinking like now, if you're using LinkedIn as a platform in recruiting, you probably are using AI to some extent, because they have AI to analyze, you know, best fit candidates and everything. But I don't know how extensively LinkedIn recruiting is used in Iceland yet. But then I'm like, okay, probably the biggest use of AI today in recruitment is like people asking AI to write their resumes. Like, can you make this sound amazing, you know? But you know, I don't believe it's, you know, used a lot in Iceland yet.
Do you see this, like, so like, the examples we use, like Amazon, something like that, you have this like huge corporations using this, and obviously like dealing with like masses of applications that they're kind of dealing with. And I mean, like half or more than half of Icelandic employees are like working for small companies or mid-sized companies. Like, is this like, are these AI tools just like as a cost-benefit analysis, like are they kind of useful for them to kind of go into this route of using AI tools for recruiting, or is that like, is this like something that they would like be using in the future?
In organizations where I interviewed people where they're like slightly bigger organizations, they are interested in like, you know, using like AI for recruitment because they get a lot of applications, and sometimes they get they recruit from like outside of Iceland also. So then it's like on a side. But then for the organizations where they are like quite small, they feel it's going to be like an inconvenience, more costly than it's supposed to be, because a small organization doesn't necessarily need such a complicated system to analyze. If you get 20 to 30 applicants, like an HR person can deal with 20 to 30 applicants. So I think in that case, because a lot of the companies are small, that is why they don't really use, you know, AI for like recruitment. And also for like the example of the fishing industries, even though it's a big like industry, a lot of the recruitment is more, should I say whom you know, like recommended. It's like they don't, and it's because you don't need to have like a high education to work on the fishing line. The recruitment process, what they call volume recruitment, is very simple, not so complicated that it requires, you know, there's a lot of the times people just walk in or have someone recommend them or come like as family members or people are already working there, and then is that. So I mean, some of them are thinking of using AI for recruitment in the future, but as of now, but for management, they use it a lot because then you need to be able to like oversee, you know, the whole production process. And a number of them also have like these cameras to just see the machines. I mean, it's like good, positive, you know, also because the machines, just to check that, like if there's something goes wrong, they can see, you know, then they can act quickly when they are also monitoring. So in as much as it puts like pressure and, you know, stress on employees, it's also, on the other hand, if it also sort of monitors, you know, in case something fails, something goes wrong, and then they can like act fast and
And I think, like, I mean, also just like kind of thinking on these lines, also just like how this like might affect like work culture as well. Like, you mean you have this like kind of constant monitoring. Like, does this like kind of push companies, even like small companies, into like using more kind of algorithmic metrics of valuing like what is a good worker and not a good worker? And like, would that be some kind of worry? I mean, like also just like, and then you have these kind of situations where you have these like employees like trying to find like kind of ways to kind of scam the system.
I think it would be a huge problem, because like, I mean, working especially in the places where you work with people, you can measure everything like through metrics. You can use numbers to decide that this person is or is not a good worker. There's so many things that are involved, so many soft skills, you know, and it's like, as like, for instance, the example I gave about the customer service, you know, imagine you call a company and you're like, oh, I have this problem. They're like, okay, and then they talk you through so far because like they're trying to meet this quota, and they're like, okay, yeah, we are there, and you leave unsatisfied as a customer. Like, you end up complaining a lot, you know. So, but then this person sort of has met their numbers for the day, and it's recorded that they're like, you know, the best. But then to you, the customer or whoever is receiving the service, it was like the worst experience for you, you know. So it tends to make people who actually take time to, you know, actually talk to their customers, you know, use their soft to understand, you know, research, and it's like, it takes away from them. It sort of demeans their, you know, skills, because they're not sort of meeting a certain number, and that is not fair. And also that is not good for the company, because if your customers leave unsatisfied, then they might not come back.
This is a great point because I believe in like most of the recruitment tools designed at least up until today in AI and also just in machine learning in the old days, etc. You're always thinking about like learning from past data. So you're thinking like, okay, what was the candidate pool? Then I categorize them, you know, as the AI into some categories, mostly like one variable categories. And then you take data on like who was hired, but you don't necessarily measure, was it a good hire?
Yeah.
Was it an inclusive hire? What did it mean for the workplace? So that's the like, you know, you're always trying to mimic something that happened without measuring the results from it.
Yeah.
And you're not taking into account, you know, a lot of research on inclusivity and diversity and what it means. So it's flawed in that way by design today, because we're always learning from historical data, like you're saying, and not everything is a number, you know.
And then that's why you just using random, like just using historical data of the company is also like dangerous, because then you sort of defeat the whole purpose of getting like new like people with different insights, you know, different backgrounds. Because if you're going to base on what we already have, then you're not improving anything.
No.
You're just sort of this cycle of same people, same ideas.
You're limiting.
You know? Yeah, it's very
so
limited.
much. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. No, I think also just like, because like you were talking about like the training data and like how the it's like mostly, I mean, like the training data that like in ChatGPT is just like white men in like Los Angeles, you know, and like their values, kind of like the situation that we're kind of living with. And like maybe it's kind of interesting to also know, because like you have this idea that like these like large language models that we're using, that like they are this kind of black box with like we know they have this kind of massive base of data that they're kind of working with and extrapolating from. We kind of don't know always like the mechanisms on why they put out the output that they put. Like how are what kind of data is like being used to kind of correct for what are we feeding them, and how do we kind of, if like the big mass of the data is already like white men in LA, like what's the, like how do we kind of correct for that? It's like, and are we hopeful that that can work? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just about like examining your training data and, you know, to see how diverse is this training data. In cases of like big organizations or big companies, sometimes the data is sourced from the internet. So with that one, it's kind of difficult. And I mean, it's a lot of time and a lot of money, and most companies are not really willing to do that.
The ROI becomes smaller, so they don't do it.
Yeah, but then I mean, there've been suggestions that have been made that like you can sort of create your own data, like artificial data. So you can create a series of artificial data that can be more inclusive, you know, or substitute some parts of the original data you have with, you know, made up data that fits the profile, or just start from scratch, which probably might not be the best option since I mean, time and money. But then training data is like one of the biggest issues, because if the base is biased, then everything else just becomes corrupted.
So it, like, I think it evolves a lot around this, and you're so spot on that we are limiting ourselves to like which fields of study and academia and expertise are needed in training and making AI. So it needs to be like a lot of stakeholders from different fields of study and everything, and it also needs to be like, if you're, it could be if you have training data that you make a stance that there's like an additional variable, like is this good data, and you categorize it, and not like based on the opinion of the people designing it, by using sociology, using like, you know, fields that we have to merge into this kind of design and the architecture of the AI. That's where the biggest opportunities, I would say, lie in this. But are we going to do it? Am I hopeful? I don't know. That's like a whole other discussion. I think we need to have a whole other conference.
That also feeds into like your talk on intersectionality, like and also having like a diverse team. So you don't just have to have people with AI knowledge. You can have, you know, like an ethics analyst or people from different fields to sort of influence this from scratch. So before the system comes into play, you're already thinking, how can we make this less biased? So from the onset, you don't wait to finish and you're like, oh, we can't really do much about it. But if you think about this from the start, from scratch, while you're developing the tool, then it's a lot easier to input a lot of things that will mitigate bias or reduce the likelihood of bias happening.
But here also lies a huge responsibility of us or leaders who are using AI tools. If you're like, you have a job to optimize something at work and your management team says, can't you just use AI? You know, this is easy. And then you have a responsibility, okay, I have to use AI or optimize something here to read on the tools, you know, like what is this tool, how was it designed, who designed it, who is developing it, what training data is it built on? Because this matters a lot, and you should, you know, also be responsible for like, getting to know this and, you know, understanding the AI tool to some extent if you're going to implement it at work, especially in like sensitive processes like recruitment. You know, it matters a lot.
It matters a lot. I agree, and that's why you talk, like there's the issue of like being prepared as a company and also preparing your employees, you know, so not just you as a company, but also the people that, you know, this is going to be used on or used with also have to be involved in the conversation of, is this good enough, or like, how is it going to affect us? How do we reduce this and that? And for there's this organization that I did one of my field works, and I was speaking to this AI ethics analyst, and then they had like a lot to say in terms of it's a big company, so they have this section like they take care of, like before they implement anything, they scrutinize it, like, and then they also use like third-party AI ethics boards to further check to see like, is this tool doing, will this tool do what it says it does? And you know, and also it's not just about preparedness, also includes following up, you know, the whole process. So it's like you are like feedback, as we both said. So it's like, is the tool doing what it said it would do, or like, are there any issues that have come about? You know, how can we go back to the drawing board and fix this and that? And I think especially for tools that are already probably in the system, you could also sort of like maybe do this feedback mechanism thing to see, okay, how best can we, you know, fix this problem?
And also because like like talking about bias in particular, is just like, because like bias is also like bound to like nebulous kind of things. It's like overall values and worldviews and norms of behavior and stuff like that, which are, I think, like, I mean, it's hard to come up with like concrete algorithmic kind of rules of like how to mitigate bias in that sense. So, and like one worry I'd have is like that like these are kind of subtly integrated into the land in these models. So it's like really kind of hard to kind of and maybe it's like hard to overcome, or maybe it's like too expensive too. Like that's like an interesting thing, I think, like it has come up a couple of times here, is that like the because like we're kind of used to AI being almost free, with like we're maybe paying our like $20 for ChatGPT extra access, you know, but like all of the externalities, and I mean just like the resources, I mean like you have these kind of, I don't like the statistics, you know, you have just like having ChatGPT draw up one image is the same as like fully charging your phone or something like that, and then you're just like sitting there and like, no, I want the pictures, like, no, put it a little bit to the left, no, can you put a hat on it, you know, something like that. So this kind of externalities, like, is that something that like we kind of might see in the like near future, is that like we're hitting a certain wall with AI in terms of that, like that companies might?
It's also the fact that we get so many like industrial revolutions happening every now and then. We all know the history of that, and we all know as well that AI is originated like, you know, just in the 50s or 60s or something. The design for it was like implemented way before we had the hardware to perform what it's doing today. So it's been like accelerated so much in the past few years because of just the capabilities of like working memories and CPUs all around the world, and of course that has environmental consequences. now we are at a bit of a stagnant point, and we might become into a disappointment era of AI, where we are all waiting for something amazing to happen and free, and like it will just do everything for me, you know. And we might become a bit disappointed and impatient, you know, now, because we are hitting a wall here around just like what we can do to the earth and the atmosphere around this. And also I hope that like future generations are like less excited and more like practical about it, because we're like so excited to use something, you know, like this, and that they think about, you know, the future as well. So I think that's a really good observation. But I also think that people are afraid of AI a bit, and are a bit on the fence of like, is it gonna take my job? You know, all of that. Like if you Google it, you get like, you know, 140 billion results. Like, is AI gonna take my job? You know, it's one of the biggest fears today, you know. So we really don't know exactly what's gonna happen there.
Yeah, I think it's like a, maybe should I say a two-edged sword? Because I mean, for instance, that this like sort of expectation that sort of creates a market. So it's like the higher the demand, the more the supply, and the higher the demand, the faster the supply, and the less likely that there are so many tools out there that are like snake oil, if you could say. So it's like there's a chance that they'll be producing these tools to meet the demand when it doesn't meet the standard. And that's why like these regulations, like the AI Act, is like important to sort of halt this, you know, rush to do more with AI, produce more, to, you know, to reach this height of perfection or this superhuman sort of
more efficiency.
Efficiency. And I think it's a bit disturbing in as much as, so because like one, and also like just to think about in terms of supply, there's so many like or should I say countries or people that are going to be left behind, that are going to fall within the cracks because they don't have access or the ability, you know, to use these systems. And the more we technologize, the less they have the chance to fit in. So it's like we are creating a whole new form of exclusion.
And classism in order of, you know, it's like there's a very homogeneous group of people in the world making the demands for AI, designing it, writing the code, architecture and everything, testing it, giving feedback on it, using it every day. So it's also a matter of like your educational level today. Are you using AI? Do you know what it means? So it's increasing the gap in like terms of job safety and recruitment, because maybe you know how to work the AI systems in order to get the job. So it's increasing these gaps really, really fast. But I think also like we want AI because we want this algorithm or neural network to enhance what the human capacity is. So that's the original idea, and it's fascinating because you want something that's faster and can do something that the human brain cannot, make connections, etc. So it's no wonder that AI is making connections that we didn't think it would. Like the, you know, good intent with the Amazon hiring you know, system that you were talking about. They were not like, the system was not doing like, if it's a woman, then we don't hire her. It was like women's college, if it had the word women's college or something like that.
Anything related
you know,
to
so
women.
it's making connections that you didn't foresee maybe when you're designing it, because the intentions were really good. It's just the historical data is so exclusionary. The AI can't help it.
But there's also like that's like also an interesting example with the gender bias in the applications, like reading the applications, because like what I thought is just like a massive amount of research on human bias in the same processes. So it's already the case that like if there's a like female name at the top, or if it's like foreign something name at the top, like you already have this bias in like human processes. And I felt like what I was like thinking when I was like listening to you talk about that was like it's this like a zero sum. It's like even switching to the AI model isn't like maybe making the bias worse, might possibly make it a little bit better. It's like a kind of correcting for it.
It has the potential to do so.
Yeah, it has the potential to make it better, but it also has the potential to make it very worse. Because this time it's like you know, there's a difference between one human doing it and then a computer that has access to so much information, so much data, so much computing power. You know, it's like it does 100 times. That's an under-exaggeration. It does so much more than the human can do, you know. And as, for instance, the case, Amazon case you use, if it can pick up, you know, these like words and then discriminates based on that, that's even worse. That's probably something even a human might not consider doing or can't do, you know. So it's like it can make the bias that humans already have worse.
And maybe the biggest danger there is if you believe that AI is a neutral thing. That's probably the biggest danger. Like if we all understand that it's getting there, it is biased, but we're training it, you know, it's not a neutral, it's not always right, then we're in a better shape. But if it's like, oh no, AI said this, and nobody can say anything. That's why like the feedback is so important now. And like, I actually, of course, gave ChatGPT the feedback around the, you know, non-disabled white doctor. I was like, oh, well, that's a bit of a stereotype, don't you think, you know? And then it gave me like 5 people, and they were all like stereotypically really beautiful. Nobody ever has bad skin in AI or anything. There's not a fat person or anything, nobody with visible disabilities, you know. So I gave the feedback until I got like, I think it was 100 people in the picture. I was like, wow, okay, I give up, you know, this is, and so it was like charging my phone, what, 6 times probably, you know, getting these pictures. But I'm trying to give the feedback, you know.
And I feel like that's why like raising awareness and, you know, training about these issues is very important, because people have the tendency to believe that, oh, once it's a machine, it's infallible. So people sort of just relax and, oh, the machine is doing the work. And especially when like you're told when you buy a tool that this tool helps to mitigate bias, and then it's like you tune out, you know, of it, and you're like, okay, the tool is doing all the work, but then it's really not 100%, probably to some extent, but then, you know, so that's why it's also important feedback to the machine, but also feedback for yourself as an organization using it. Like, we got this tool to, you know, reduce bias or to make our applicant tool more diverse. Are we getting the results that we initially wanted? That's why it's good to always go back and check, like, this is the goal we set. Are we reaching this goal? Are we like, you know, are we now over the past maybe 2, 3, 4 years, have we, you know, hired people that are somewhat different or more diverse from what we've already had in the past, you know? But if you're going to go by the, oh, you know, AI is doing the work, and if there's no person of if there's no diversity, it means that probably the people that are qualified are what is qualified, then you still, like, a lot of people are going to fall, that are qualified are going to fall within the cracks. And
I think, like, also, I want to come back to the thing we were talking about, like increased efficiency and this kind of algorithmic metrics in the workplace and this kind of managerial level and this like monitoring element. I was thinking, because like you were talking about like the inclusionary potential, like with like creating devices and programs that might help people with disabilities, for example, to take part. But like my immediate thought was just like, wouldn't these devices or these like techniques also be used by non-disabled people or something like that to create like a situation or environment where we have to kind of run faster and jump higher and ultimately like create situations of exclusion precisely because of the access to these technologies.
That's actually a good point, but actually like people are not maybe facing the exclusion, they don't enhance it and they're working anyway, you know. So a screenwriter might do nothing for a person who doesn't need it, you know, for instance, like that. So it might, you know, it might increase the gap in some aspects, but, you know, for some people with some learning disabilities or something, it's just something that, you know, it's a completely different way of doing things. But I think it's a huge question. It's unanswered. We can't foresee it.
It also boils down to, you know, usage, like appropriate usage or ethical usage. Like, you can't control everything. You just have to equip people with the ability to be able to do that. Because you can't go to every country, every company and say, you know, don't, you know. So it's like, that's why, as I said before, like education, awareness, it's extremely important because people have to be informed. People have to make these decisions for themselves as, thinking beings, because we have the capacity to do that. Some people just don't do it because they are not aware of it. Yeah. But then, if you call to attention that this is the issue and this is some of the ways we can, fix it, then people will be on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. I think we have to wrap up. I think that was like perfect closing words. Couldn't have asked for better closing words, I think. Thank you, Sigyn and Dilys.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in and being with us for today. I want to remind you again that Equality Days are going. There's a full program until Thursday. You can check out the schedule at Jafnréttisdagar.is. Thank you and goodbye.